Once there lived a tiny nightingale in the ancient land of Israel. Not a note he ever sang until that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. On that night he came upon a field, there a band of shepherds to sleep did yield. For none knew what wonders the dark concealed that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Suddenly an angel host appeared with their songs, the solemn darkness cleared. And the shepherds awoke, God's host revered that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Then the nightingale did fly up high, till he joined the angels in the sky. In his joy he opened his beak to cry that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. As he tried to chirp that holy name, suddenly his voice in music came. And with angel choirs he did proclaim that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Ever since that night, the nightingale every heart with music does regale. And his favorite song, it is the tale of that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Then let us, if we would sweetly sing, join the angels praising Christ the King, that they to our hearts once more may bring that night when Christ was born. That night, no song we can sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ is born.
In Chapter 1 of a place called Ananda, Swami Kriyananda talks about how this song, That Night When Christ Was Born, along with the Christmas Mystery that we enjoyed last week, both appeared full-blown in his mind as he was driving across the Bay Bridge from Oakland to San Francisco in Christmas time of 1964, the very evening that he met his guitar instructor, Larry Hanks. This is the same Larry Hanks, the same instructor who would later challenge Kriyananda by saying that all of his songs were too happy and didn't express the earnestness and seriousness of life from which the song The Non-Blues came. So you might enjoy that little anecdote. That Night When Christ Was Born, or oftentimes we just call it That Night for simplicity, of course tells a very sweet story of a tiny nightingale who never sings until the first Christmas. With the ending of the song saying that if we too would sing sweetly, then we must use our voices to sing of God. Or put another way, you never find your true voice until you simply say, I love you, God. Enough said, right? Do we need to say anything more? Well, of course, as we find with just about every one of Kriyananda's songs, there's a lot more going on under the surface that we can explore and appreciate and harvest deeper insights for ourselves and for our spiritual aspirations. So the first question to ask is, well, why the nightingale? Well, as a bird, the nightingale is famed for its beauty, its beautiful song, which it sings both day and night, which is also to say through darkness and light, which is something we'll explore when we get to the Song of the Nightingale as a song. The nightingale symbolically has been used many times in literature, especially in poetry, even back to Homer's Odyssey. Shakespeare even likened his love poetry to the nightingale's song. Beethoven and Franz Liszt used the nightingale's song in some of their compositions. Omar Khayyam refers to it several times in the Rubaiyat, as does Yogananda in a number of his own poems. So suffice it to say that a nightingale is a symbol of one who has a beautiful song to sing. And even in Yogananda's interpretations of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, he identifies the nightingale as a symbol even for eternal truth. So in that night, to have a nightingale who has never sung a note really implies anyone who has a beautiful song to sing but has not yet found their true voice, you might say, the voice that speaks the truth and the beauty, and finding that through a connection to wisdom and to God. So the song's really saying that there's nothing worth singing. There's no notes worth singing or saying, no notes, words worth saying, until you've awakened to God's presence within. None of those notes are worthy of the name if they're born merely of lower consciousness rather than born of the higher truth of Christ consciousness. And so those notes have to be born that night when Christ was born, that night when Christ consciousness awakens in us. Then our words and our notes have importance and meaning. Now the word tiny here, so we have nightingale, we also have a tiny nightingale. Nightingales are not normally small, tiny birds. They're kind of like robin-sized things, just standard kind of bird size. But tiny here implies humbleness, which is to say that you don't need to be famous or important or anything like that for your voice to matter if it's connected to truth. If it speaks of God or inspiring others to seek God, then you don't have to be an angel. When you're connected to God, the words you speak and the notes you sing resonate with the power of creation. And tiny here can also imply that perhaps this nightingale in the story did sing, but again, none of that singing was of any consequence because it had no purpose or lasting impact on creation, like the voice of the angels do, because it again lacks that connection to the divine. I think this interpretation is supported further by the chorus that says, "No song he did sing, so wise men tell." Now, honestly, what do wise men have to do with this story of a bird singing with the angels? Well, we could have easily said in the song, "So legend tells," and just make it a legendary story, which would be fine too. But here we've got wise men in the act. And so it's suggesting here that there's a deeper implication happening in the story because every parable or story that masters tell, that wise men tell, has some deeper implication. Otherwise, they don't choose to share it. Yogananda, for example, never told stories simply to be amusing or, of course, not to be the center of attention. They had a purpose. Everyone had a purpose in helping awaken people spiritually. And so by this connection to the wise men, then, that night must also be such a story. So now, in general, the song has this openness and cleanliness to it. There's, it's sweet, it's open, it's a clean story. I feel like there's a cleanliness in the whole upper torso and even the head. Almost like those parts of the body as you're hearing the song are becoming transparent, that they're being cleared away of shyness and cleared away of shame. The song's releasing heart from smallness, releasing its love and joy that's otherwise trapped beneath layers of uncertainty. Layers of, as we'll see in the antidote, the antidotes, the negative emotions that song serves for, is some of them is lack of confidence and low self-esteem. So if you're trapping it in the heart, those energies can't flow upwards. But if you can open the heart and release those energies, then they flow upwards from the heart, again, to the spiritual eyes we have in so many of our songs, which is where we find our voices. That's where we find our connection to God. And now let's look at each one of the verses in turn and how they kind of help that upward flow. So in the first verse, as we've really talked about, you have the tiny nightingale that's beginning in the heart chakra with just the connection to the story, the connection to Christmas time. And the second verse that night he came upon a field where bands of shepherds to sleep did yield. For none knew what wonders the dark concealed that night when Christ was born. The field and sleeping shepherds here are a metaphor for, I think, silence and the darkness of meditation, a place of stillness in which we can quiet our hearts and open to Christ's presence. And that stillness comes, as I talked about with Christmas mystery. Shepherds are, they control the flocks of the sheep. They keep the sheep from wandering, which inwardly is the shepherding of higher consciousness, keeping our desires, the sheep of our desires, from becoming scattered and scattering our heart's energies around. They're bringing that heart in, and here the bands of shepherd and their sheep are sleeping, which means they've come together and they become still. They're ready to receive Christ's presence. So then we have the appearance of the angels, this great opening of inspiration, that making in stillness that connection to the divine, where God has awakened something within us. He's awakened an awareness of our own divinity in that indwelling Christ. So the shepherds awake, saying, now we have the energy brought in, let's guide that energy further upwards, taking all of those scattered tendencies, directing them toward God, magnetically lifting that energy from the heart upward to the throat chakra, clearing away the solemn darkness of seriousness, of sorrows, of disappointments, and even of doubts. And in response to this magnetism then, the nightingale, which is to say our voice, flies up high, flies up the spine, flies up the chakra, with the energy continuing upwards from the throat to the medulla, where he then joined the angels in the sky, joined the divine voices at the spiritual eye. And in his joy of being uplifted in that words in the joy is really reflecting that we've made that connection to the inspiration of the angels, and now we can no longer deny our inherent divinity. You can't deny that the truth lives within you, within your own being. And waking up to those truths, now your voice is ready to open. You're ready to speak about those truths in every word and every note. So now the nightingale from the medulla makes the self-effort, the little effort to chirp the holy name. This is the next verse, as he tried to chirp that holy name, suggesting that it's just about making an effort to attune yourself to higher consciousness. And what happens in that? Something beautiful. Suddenly his voice and music came, and with angel choirs he did proclaim. That simplest chirp of self-offering, of trying to have ourselves and our normal ego that's separated from divine consciousness, that simple chirp done in attunement with truth becomes angelic music. Again, we don't have to be angels to do this. We just have to be in tune with truth. And it's really suggesting to us that we do really well to always express the highest truth in our speech and in our song. And now that the nightingale has found his true voice here at the spiritual eye, his own song and speech becomes an inspiration to others. Every heart his music does regale. And what does he speak of? His favorite song. It is the tale of that night when Christ was born. Not again the Christmas story of Jesus being incarnated, but the Christ consciousness awakening within one's being, awakening within every atom, singing within every atom of creation. That's the favorite song, Christ being born and awakening in all of creation, such that every note, every word, not just in ourselves, but in all of creation, it's infused with devotion, with that connection to God and the inspiration to seek Him. And that serves to lift all the hearts of everyone, every heart with music does regale, lifting them all toward God and toward that awakening. So in this song then we've brought that energy, that smallness, that you might say the shame and the shyness, the low self-esteem, the lack of confidence. We've brought all that up to the spiritual eye through this wonderful story, at which then the final verse makes clear that each one of us is the bird. This isn't about a bird that lived back in Palestine 2,000 years ago. It's about each one of us, the unawakened nightingale, who must learn to sing, must learn to attune ourselves to truth, to find our true voice not in opinions and lower thoughts, as we so often see thrown around on the internet and social media, but through offering all our heart's desires, all our ambitions, all our views, all our perspectives, all our opinions into truth, into that highest inspiration. Then let us, if we would sweetly sing, join the angels praising Christ the King, that they too our hearts once more may bring, that night when Christ was born. That little bit, now there's that little phrase in there that says, once more. That really suggests that Christ has already been born within us at some point in the past. And what we're seeing is that second birth, that second coming of Christ, which Yogananda explained is not the outward objective event of Christ appearing from the clouds, but is the awakening of the Christ consciousness within each individual. Kriyananda, in fact, uses that phrase also in The Christ Child is Sleeping in that song, when he says, for Jesus came on earth to offer second birth to all who would the blessing receive. This is not the being born again in, as you hear in many Christian churches, it's the reawakening of the Christ consciousness that is manifest again in every atom of creation. And then that last chorus, as it's sung through, it says, no song we can sing. Again saying, we're the nightingale, we've learned to sing that nothing we say, nothing we sing has any purpose or impact on all of creation without a connection to God, without a connection to truth, without that foundation of seeking God. And so, without that connection, you might as well be like that tiny nightingale who never sang a note, who never spoke a word, because nothing was important. You might as well be silent if you don't speak of God and of truth. So, taking this wonderful story of not just the nightingale, but our inner awakening, and looking at it in reverse, again, this is what I often do, taking a song, feeling its upward flow, and then, okay, reverse it now and see what's the consciousness if you take it the other direction. If you go from where it's brought us backwards down, what are we left with? We're left with that attitude that one shouts, my opinion matters, listen to me, I have a right to speak and be heard. This is again what we see all over the internet and all over social media, is people thinking my opinion must count. I explained to a friend once that's why everybody has opinions about politics, because politics by its nature is our shared experience as a community, as a country, as a county, as a state. And so everybody thinks they have a right to an opinion. And my friend was lamenting about this, saying, why don't people have opinions about things like plays and cultural events and great literature? Well, because not everybody reads that, first of all, but not everybody feels like they even have a right to an opinion. But in politics, of course, we all have a right to an opinion, so people want to shout about that all the time, and you've certainly experienced that yourself. But really, that night when Christ was born is giving us an antidote to that kind of attitude, to that egoic pride that says, who needs truth if I can command an audience? Again, you just have to look at the content on the internet to see people doing this time and time again, trying to command an audience with lies, with untruth, with just the most debased and even cruel kind of content they can invent just to get an audience and just satisfy their pride. So this song really helps overcome that. And I think it also works, as I've mentioned, the term smallness of heart. It's like the Grinch in Dr. Seuss's famous story, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, that in his smallness of heart, he has no joy. And so he tries to take Christmas, he tries to take joy away from everyone else, to take Christmas time, that night when Christ was born, to steal it from everyone else. But he finds that his own smallness of heart can't do that, can't penetrate the true joy that's there. And in that, he finds his own transformation. Now, interestingly, as much as that night when Christ was born works for things like egoic pride and the smallness of heart, it also works as what you might say are the flip side or the opposite of the same coin, which is to say lack of confidence and self-esteem, as I've already mentioned. Because pride shuts you off from the Christ within you because you don't believe you need God at all, but so does lack of confidence and low self-esteem, because in those negative states, you don't think you are worthy of the Christ within. So you must let go of the pride as well as letting go of the unworthiness. In fact, unworthiness is just as egoic as pride. And so that's why I say they're flip sides of the same coin, that once you let go of one, you can let go of the other as well and say, I am a child of God. I'm as worthy as the greatest saint, as all the angels, because I am created in God's image. And this is really, Kriyananda assigns this song to day 29 of Secrets of Emotional Healing, where he says the secret of overcoming low self-esteem is to realize that you are an integral part of everything that is, sustained forever by that power which brought the very universe into existence. Open your heart to life. Cease seeing yourself as a lonely planet, wanderless on an empty desert. And once you see that you are an integral part of all that is, a powerful thought that we also bring out in our Sunday services at Ananda in the Festival of Light, you think, how can there be either pride or that false humility? Embrace God. Embrace the truth that dwells within you. Attune to that truth, to the indwelling Christ, and find that you too can sing with the angels. So let's now enjoy that song once more and feel that upliftment, feel the story of yourself awakening in the Christ consciousness, and have a joyful Christmas.
Once there lived a tiny nightingale in the ancient land of Israel. Not a note he ever sang until that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born.
On that night he came upon a field, there a band of shepherds to sleep did yield. For none knew what wonders the dark concealed that night when Christ was born.
That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born.
Suddenly an angel host appeared with their songs, the solemn darkness cleared, and the shepherds awoke, God's hearts revered, that night when Christ was born.
That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Then the nightingale did fly up high, till he joined the angels in the sky. In his joy he opened his beak to cry, that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born.
As he tried to chirp that holy name, suddenly his voice in music came, and with angel choirs he did proclaim that night when Christ was born.
That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born.
Ever since that night, the nightingale every heart with music does regale.
And his favorite song it is, the tale of that night when Christ was born. That night, no song he did sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ was born. Then let us, if we would sweetly sing, join the angels praising Christ the King, that they to our hearts once more may bring that night when Christ was born. that night, no song we can sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ is born. That night, no song we can sing, so wise men tell, till that night when Christ is born.